which we will have the Pledge of Allegiance product. So come forward, if you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Almighty and eternal God, we ask you to bless the work of our city council. Grant the wisdom of your Holy Spirit upon their deliberations. May they be good stewards of the work entrusted to them. May their deliberations be productive and bring life and joy to our community. We ask you to bless as well all who serve our community in so many capacities, especially our first responders and those in healthcare. Help us all to be good citizens and to seek the good for one another. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Father, thank you very much for being here this evening. Please, thank you for taking time to be here tonight. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Caller?
Here.
McGee?
Here.
Allgood?
Here.
Wagner?
Here.
Hopper?
Here.
Colvin?
Here. All right, we do have a full council to hear the items of business before us this evening, and a couple are on the phone. We have Councilman Pollard and Councilman McGee who are with us on the Zoom meeting. Again, we welcome you all this evening and hope your time here is enjoyable and informational. Are there any items on the agenda that present a conflict of interest for any council member? All right. This evening we would start with special presentations. This evening the presentation we have tonight is by the Iowa Suicide Prevention Hotline. I'm not sure if you'll come forward, give us your name for the record, and welcome.
Hello, welcome. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
This would be my first presentation wearing a mask, so I'll see if I can do this without my glasses on now. My name is Lee Flynn. I am the director of the Idaho Suicide Prevention Hotline. And do you need the business address?
No.
Okay. All right. So I thank you for this opportunity to briefly visit with you and let you know the work of the hotline. I know you have a full agenda, so I'll get right to it. And I've been the director for 3 months, so if you have any questions to follow up or any information that I don't cover tonight, I'm happy to follow up later. So 3 things. I want to just quickly let you know what the hotline is, how we operate, and then I want to ask for a partnership with the city of Caldwell in helping us to raise awareness about the hotline. I have shared a fact sheet with all of you, and I'm not going to go over that. I just wanted to supply that so you could look at it at your leisure. So I'm just going to address the basics right now. First off, what the hotline is. The hotline started in 2012, and it is the only statewide 24/7 accredited crisis intervention and suicide prevention hotline. We are a nonprofit organization. We provide crisis intervention and suicide prevention services to all Idahoans. We get approximately 1,000 calls per month, and it ranges from people who are at high risk, at imminent risk of death, and we also get calls from people in a variety of crises. We also field phone calls to many people who are severely mentally ill. And just to give you an example of the latter, of somebody who's severely mentally ill, some of our callers are what we call familiar callers or regular callers. And so one example I have is that we have a regular caller who is extremely schizophrenic, and he calls the hotline because he's often in crisis, although not suicidal, but he is often in crisis. Previous to the hotline existing, previous to 2012, this person used to call 911 every time he was in crisis. So I just want to use that as an example, just one example of how we really are kind of a buffer and a resource for cities and other municipalities So, you know, hopefully it takes some of the strain off of your emergency services when people know that they can call us rather than calling 911 when it's not, an emergency. So, I'd also just say suicide is preventable. Most people who feel suicidal do not want to die. They want their particular pain to stop, whatever that might be. As you may know, Idaho has the fifth highest rate of suicide in the nation. So this really, truly is a public safety issue. How we operate. Our model utilizes highly trained volunteers, currently as phone responders. Currently, we have 70 volunteers, active volunteers, who answer the phone calls and help seekers from every county in Idaho. Those volunteers are supervised by hotline employees. Just a quick mention of COVID-19. We get a lot of calls these days from reporters wanting to know how the pandemic is affecting Idahoans and if suicides are rising. At this point, we are really grateful to say that suicide is not increasing in Idaho due to the pandemic. Our calls are about the same volume as they were last year, but it is important to note that the nature of the calls are somewhat different. For example, we're fielding more phone calls from people seeking help, whether they're suicidal, whether they're in some other type of crisis, whether they're mentally ill. More and more Idahoans are reporting higher levels of anxiety. That's up much more than this time last year. More reported stress due to joblessness, and also an increase in interpersonal difficulties or interpersonal conflicts, and that also includes domestic violence. None of those are probably surprising to you. Many Idahoans were hurting before the pandemic, and with this pandemic going on, it's just more and more of a strain on all Idahoans. I would say, too, that we are also noticing we're getting more referrals from hospital psych units, emergency departments, and community crisis centers. And we do partner with the community crisis centers to provide follow-up on some of their patients once they leave the crisis center. Many Idahoans are experiencing impacts on their mental and emotional well-being, but help is available. And we're part of the puzzle of mental health care in Idaho. And we also like to remind people that social connectedness is very important. And all of us have a role in supporting others, even with physical distancing in place. Just to start to wrap up, I just want to make sure and mention, I do want to ask you to partner with us in helping to get the word out. We passed around, Debbie passed around some wall cards, and I left some posters that you're welcome to post and use in any way you like. And we're happy to supply more to you if you need more. We'd also like to ask if the city could also have a link on our website linking to the hotline just to help us get the word out. And if that's of interest, you can follow up with me. My name and my phone number and email is on the fact sheet that I sent out. And we just like, again, to get the word out as much as possible. In the future, we hope to be providing trainings to various partners, including cities, but that's going to be on hold for a little while until we get through the current pandemic. One last partnership before I wrap up. I do want to let you know that the hotline has a formal partnership with the Ada County Jail, and that allows inmates to place calls to the hotline at no charge. Obviously, that helps keep incarcerated individuals safe, many of whom are not going to be there very long, so it helps them navigate through the current trouble that they're in, but it also relieves some pressure on the jail staff. We have reached out to Sheriff Donahue, and we're going to be pursuing a similar partnership with Canyon County. So that's just one thing I wanted to mention. And to wrap up, again, the hotline provides crisis intervention and suicide prevention support for persons at risk and for those concerned about them. So if anyone has a friend or a family member or a neighbor that they feel like are in distress, maybe suicidal, we also encourage those individuals to call the hotline, and our trained responders can give you tips and help you navigate that situation so you can support your loved ones. And I think I'll stop there. We are, really appreciate the chance to visit with you tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or can follow up anytime. We hope to be a resource for you moving forward.
You can't see that I'm smiling.
Okay.
Lee, thank you so very much for your presentation. Council members, any questions for the Director?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Wagner?
Thank you so much. Just a quick comment and a question. So I truly, this is one of the most important special presentations we'll have all year. This is the silent pandemic, I guess you could say. You know, we have obviously COVID-19, but, you know, I've seen it when I sat on one of the welfare, I know Lee a little bit. It's great to see you, by the way. But it's sad, how much this is affecting, and it's just, you don't realize it. I know several families, especially the youth, is so tough, on that. So this is such an important topic. I'm so grateful that you came and presented this tonight. The one question I did have is, I know in the legislature, I believe it was 6 sessions ago, Representative Joe, I'm trying to remember who it was, but I thought that there was a bill that they brought forward for one of the one of the 3-digit numbers, like, as a hotline also.
Yes.
Do you mind mentioning that, or touching on that?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, that happened earlier this year, it seems like a lifetime ago. Senator Fred Martin, championed that, and so the 411, helpline has existed for quite a while, I can't remember how long. And so now we're more synced up with the 411 line, so calls can be, if 411 gets a suicidal caller, they can immediately transfer the call to our hotline. There's going to be a similar change on the national level. I think it's about 2 years out. There's going to be a national 3-digit number of 988. But again, that's about 2 years out. So, and I would mention, Councilman Wagner, since I can follow up also and email you our latest data report. But you mentioned youth, and one of the things that really surprised me when I took this job was most of our callers are, you know, maybe my age, you know, 45 to 65 and older, kind of.
Just young people, though.
Yes, absolutely, young people like us. But we get young callers, and I know the last data report that I looked at, we had callers as young as 10 years old. So it really, you know, 10 years old up to, you know, upper 80s.
You know, there's a mental health issue side of this as well that comes into play, and that is sometimes emphasizing the need for better mental health care throughout the state and our communities. Actually, my daughter was hospitalized at 9 years old as being acutely suicidal. That was mental illness problems that she had, and she still deals with those today. But this kind of strikes close to home for me, and we certainly understand the value of having resources available to folks to get to a point where they feel like they're hopeless. And it's certainly important and necessary, and we appreciate the work that you do. So, thank you very much. Any other questions for Lee?
And again, on the fact sheet, it's got the picture on it. On the back is my name and email and phone number. So feel free to reach out anytime. We'll stay in contact.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You bet. All right, that is the only special presentation that I'm aware of this evening. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address the council about an item that is not on the agenda? Sir? Welcome, Mr. Porter.
Well, good evening. Just wanted to share a couple words. I had the great pleasure of helping out with the food giveaway last week. It was organized by Chelsea from the city of Caldwell. And I take a lot of opportunities to express my pride in the city that I live in. Every time that I have a chance, I like to tell people just exactly what Caldwell is all about. And that was an incredible effort by a lot of people. But what struck me most was the fact that our mayor was there for a couple of hours, taking time out of his busy schedule to meet the real pressing human needs of our community. I had such delight in, as I was processing people coming through and talking to folks in their cars, I'd say, look on up ahead, you see that real sweaty guy in the yellow shirt? You know who that is? That's your mayor. I think it says a lot about our community when the mayor is out there on the front lines, when it's 95 to 98 degrees. We were all sweating, but we knew we were doing important work. And once you see hurt and pain and need, you can't unsee it. So for myself, for my wife, for the flock that I call my own, my congregation, we applaud you, and we are so thankful, and we are so proud of our city, and we are so blessed to be a part of this community. So kudos to you and to the council, and to Chelsea for helping to organize that. We had a great time volunteering, and it was a meaningful day. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a humbling experience. The thing that I felt most proud of is the people came through, as we were loading boxes into their vehicles. I don't know how many we loaded, but not one person failed to say thank you so much. That's incredible, to have people come in and be appreciative and humble. And the people that I got to work with were kind and they were there for the right reason. They were there only to help, and it was amazing. Appreciate you, your wife, and all those that helped the organization as well, and those that participated. So thank you, Pastor Porter, and that was a good example of how great Caldwell is. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address the council about an item that's not on the agenda? All right. The next item on the agenda would be the consent calendar. Mr. Carlson?
I move that we accept the consent calendar as printed.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Carlson to approve the consent calendar as printed. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Allgood. And again, the consent calendar for those folks in the audience are items that are considered routine in nature or previously items that were held in hearings to this point. Or items that, again, that are this completion of items previously acted upon by the council. Any further discussion on the consent calendar? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Coulter?
Yes.
Pollard?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Allgood?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Palmer?
Thank you. The items on the consent calendar have been approved unanimously by the Caldwell City Council. The first item on the old business calendar is a continued item from a couple of weeks ago. This is a continued public hearing from July 20, 2020, known as case number ENN 2002 and also SUB 20P 03. It was continued after the hearing was open and after the staff report had begun, and we continued it at that point. This is a request by TO Engineers on behalf of Lee Jenke. I'm so sorry. I knew I was going to.
No, you got it registered.
I tried. I'm sorry. I apologize. And Pontifex Capital to annex parcel R3434010B, 13.9 acres with a zone designation of R1, single family residential, consistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan designation as low density residential. Also requested is a preliminary plat, Langley Hall subdivision, of a 10.41 acre portion of the subject property containing 31 residential lots and 9 common lots. The subject property is located at 10164 Elvera Lane, Nampa, Idaho. So I'll declare this hearing open again at the point we were at. Everybody was sworn in at the last public hearing that was here to speak, so you don't need to be sworn in again, but just please as a reminder, as you come forward and present your testimony, you can give us your name and your address and then acknowledge that you have been sworn in. So I'll declare this hearing open and continue from that point. Welcome again. Debbie, how are you?
Good, thank you. Debbie Ruth, Senior Planner, City of Caldwell, 21 Cleveland Boulevard. As indicated, we are here to continue with this discussion and hearing for an annexation and preliminary plat. for Langley Hall subdivision. And, the annexation portion of the property is 13.98 acres, with a, requested zone designation of R1, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan, map for the property. The preliminary plat is a development on 10.41 acres of the property, with 31 residential lots and 9 common lots. The, hearing was continued a couple of weeks ago, because a concept plan, a revised concept plan has been submitted versus an actual preliminary plat for the lot designation, in response to, the development not having included the storm drainage in there. So there's still, the applicant did resubmit an actual preliminary plat with the revised storm drainage shown, and, but the open space is still at issue, and, sorry. Anyway, so there's, essentially, the, zoning ordinance for, the landscaping indicates that open space cannot be, isn't to be on the irrigation drainage easements or in storm drainage easements. And the concept of the open plan is, as I interpret the ordinance, is to provide some open space for the, residents internal to the development, actually within the development, and that there is some green space and pathways and some, not just mansion houses into a property. Now, this property is, again, as I say, designed for R1, so the lots are 8,000 square feet or greater, and are not designed necessarily poorly. There is the noble drain divides the property, leaving a, triangular piece of property in the southwest area, on the west side of the drain, for, where the initial plat had intended for there to be an open space park. The revised plat has, now indicated that it's primarily a storm drainage, not necessarily a pond, but a seepage area, whereby they contend that the, residents of the development could still use that as a park, in a park area. I don't disagree that that's possible, other than that it's not consistent with the ordinance requirements of that. And in that same realm, the pathway that's proposed along the noble drain and runs along that fence line, along that lot lines of those, the proposed open space to meet the 27,000 square foot required open space is all along that drain, just the paved pathway and some green, natural grasses and things. Currently,
the Noble Drain is pretty deep, like about 15 feet deep probably, full of weeds. And it will probably remain with weeds. It's consistent that way in the development both to the north and south of this development. So staff contends that, although they've shown that there's open space and that in other developments, the drainage easements have been used for pathways that have been calculated as open space, that is not the intent of the open space, portion of the ordinance. We're not, the development itself, the number of lots and the size of the lots are consistent with the ordinance requirements. There is no connecting area other than the street sidewalk to that proposed open space park or the landscape or the pathway. And so, so it's not consistent in that it isn't providing a, connecting pathway, micro pathways to the major pathway. And the ordinance reads that it needs a connecting pathway every 600 feet, and that's not on there either. I'm not opposed to the development, certainly not opposed to the annexation as proposed. I think that we have developments pretty much all over the city that have utilized these irrigation drainages, and calculated them into their open space. And, but I again feel that this is not consistent or does not meet the intent of why the open space requirement is in the ordinance. And I'll stand for question.
Thank you, Ms. Root. Are there questions from council?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Paul?
So, Mrs. Root, what you're saying is we're providing open space for this subdivision, but no way for this subdivision to obtain it without going clear to the road and rolling around the block to get there.
Correct.
And same with the pathway. So it really does not provide, possible benefit to the subdivision, would it not?
Well, I think you can look at that a couple of ways, but it does not provide readily accessible internal open space to the residents of that development.
And you said something in regards on that pathway is natural grass. Are you basically saying the weeds that grow there?
Well, the landscape plan that the developer submitted does, I believe they intended to seed and plant, naturally, not sod, basically. But they can only do that to a point where the irrigation district, allows for, landscaping or development into their easement along there. So, currently, we do not have a written consent from the irrigation company. It has not been provided to us for the pathway in that easement. Arbor subdivision is located to the south of this development. And let's go to the pictures on that. So this is the current state of the drainage lot and that noble drain on the property, subject property. The development to the south, Arbor, also has a pathway along this drain, running on this curved side of the drain. And they're landscaped against their fence line, so on the west side of the pathway, but not on the east side. And so it still looks very similar to Bristol. Jump ahead there, maybe. So that's the Arbor subdivision pathway that would be, you know, connecting. This is part of the connecting pathway system, so it meets that objective that we can connect these developments and get from one end of the, city limits to the other, and we're making good progress on that, which is really awesome, but, again, it's more about not necessarily the pathway having to be there because it's required anyway. It's whether or not the development has provided enough other open space to meet the intent of the ordinance for open space for the residents within it.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr.?
Sure, maybe one, maybe one for Brent and also one for Mr. So, I guess the question for Brent, the Noble Drain at the Bureau of Rec facility, how close are we to acquiring those, where the city is going to be responsible for those?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Weimer, the city is in the process of acquiring the title transfer in cooperation with Pioneer Irrigation District of the Bureau of Recreation. That process is long and does literally require an act of Congress, and so, we're basically at the stage in preparation to go into Congress roughly in that process. And so, I really can't tell you, I don't know if it's, you know, something that would happen yet this calendar year or by the end of next calendar year. That's a little tough to say. I will throw in there that the Bureau of Rec is the entity to be approached, and they need a consent use agreement to place the pathway within that. Also, I'll note that with Arbor, we've learned that it needs to be placed far enough away from the drain to allow vehicles in there to make maintenance activities.
Quick follow-up, Mr. Mayor. Mr. White, so was Brighton able to get that agreement with the Bureau then? Is there within that easement, or is it outside of it, you know?
In the easement.
It is within.
So I think they must have gotten it. There was a little faux pas there, good intention, but there was an error in that it was, placed without the consent use agreement, and it actually ended up having to modify it, which was really unfortunate.
And just lastly for Mr., so just to make sure that I understand clearly, so is it staff's understanding that a paved pathway, the landscaping would not qualify for any council's open space, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that it's not consistent with the ordinance indicating that open space should not be in storm drainage easements, irrigation easements, utility easements, and that there are conflicting places in the ordinance where it says, yes, this pathway should be, or could be utilized, and other places not. In this case, they're not proposing landscaping along the, development side of the pathway, and they're proposing just grasses, no trees, there's nothing on the pathway to do that. They have no connecting micro pathway to the pathway other than the sidewalk on the street. There's no proposal to cross the drainage, nothing to provide for any kind of, tot lot or open space within the development. And I understand, you know, that these are a little bit larger lots, but it's still, where do we draw the line on meeting the intent of the open space that is intended to be, provide, some amenities within the development? So, that's my question.
Mr. Paulson?
Mr. Richardson, if I'm understanding this right, we are labeling this lot, or this pathway with two different standards. One is, it's okay to have a pathway there, but then we're also calling it our green spot. Is that what you're saying? So we're labeling it twice?
Yeah, and that's consistent too. There's a couple of things in the ordinance that, One is a major pathway, and, you know, so it meets the width, you know, the prescribed, 10-foot or 8-foot width, and it connects other developments, so it's connecting Castle Peak or with Arbor, with, you know, so they're making those connections, which is required in the subdivision ordinance. The contention is that this pathway may not meet the requirements for being counted as the development open space, which they're using it primarily, almost entirely, 20,000 square feet of the 27,000 required as the open space. So, not really nice sod, landscape pathway, but ditch bank. And so that's the contention. I think the pathway meets some of the requirements of the ordinance. Brent, if you'll move to the last slide of Arbor. So this is the pathway within, Arbor subdivision number 1, which is directly south of this development. Now, I'm gonna grant that this is a long power line easement, so they've got a wide, long, stretch of land that they can't build under. But they've provided a lot of open space and green space on both sides of that power line easement as well, with these connecting pathways, micro pathways, throughout the length of the development, which provides a really nice, environment as you drive down through there, through that.
I would struggle flying kites there, I think.
Well, you might struggle with just wanting to be standing there under those crickets playing lines, too, but, I guess the feeling here is, and we're talking about a lot of different size of properties, too, but there's an amenity here whereby, the people within the development and probably people that are connected to it in the other development have really good pathway access and a nice place to spend time. And green open space, which makes it really inviting.
Other questions for Ms. Ruth? Grant, I do have a question for you. Is the Noble Drain, how much water does it carry? It's full of weeds, doesn't appear to me like it would carry much.
Victoria, I don't know the answer to that, I'm sorry.
So, the Noble Drain itself is it impassable?
No, I will say this, that it is very common for these drains, and actually, I have been out to this drain, I've been out on Arbor's site when we were working with them on their, efforts with the Bureau of Reclamation. And the Noble Drain, it does carry a fair quantity of water, I think it was flow rated.
Okay.
But weeds along the banks are common because the banks are very deep. So it's difficult to keep, there's really no way to keep the weeds off except to burn or to, excavate, or maybe use a mower on an armature to get out there to mow. So, also the irrigation districts who presently care for them, are trying to do that in addition to a very good schedule of delivering water and seeing to all the water delivery calls or requests that they get. So they're, that's kind of an off-season effort that they engage in. It's one that we'll engage in once that transfer occurs.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Any other questions for Ms. Ruth?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Hogan?
I just want to confirm the layout. I keep looking at the map you're on. The main entrance into and out of the subdivision is Spruce Street.
Yes.
And then, the address is an Elvera address. Is that just a second entrance, or is Elvera going to be part of this whatsoever?
Okay, so, I apologize for that. Elvera Lane is, the vendors currently own the property, and their home sits at the north end of this property. They are annexing so that their, parcel can be split, divided off from the 10.41 acres that's under development. So Elvera Lane is a private lane that services about 10 homes currently, including the Bender property. It will not be utilized other than for emergency access only. The road into this Langley Hall does have a cul-de-sac at the end whereby there will be an emergency access that's ballarded off so that the general public can't go through there and use Elvera Lane. It is not intended to connect to Midland either. Spruce will end here at this development currently. Yeah, right there. And so it's essentially a dead end.
Okay. Okay, so Elvera Lane is just an emergency connection, it won't be trafficked any further than it is now?
No.
The intention.
No, it's a narrow private lane, gravel lane.
Thank you.
Thanks, any other questions for
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Wagner?
And I think that helps one of my questions right there, because I was wondering about that northern property, what would happen, so it sounds like an administrative block split once the annex one city, which is good, because I think it's totally inappropriate, people just cut off a piece of property, not with proper permission from the annex, and put they want, and leave out their house or whatever, unless they can get it done appropriately, so that's good to know that they're doing that.
Yeah, they wanted to split that property off ahead of the annexation, that they had the developer go to the city, or the county, and see if they had a split available, was not available, annexation is the appropriate way to legally split that property. There was a discussion whether or not they had to plat that along with the rest of the development, and it was determined that not. It brings in other challenges with Elvera Lane and the property, so there was not a specific need to have to plat that lot.
So thank you for that clarification, and then, I guess just lastly, I know that about that gray area, trying to determine in regards to, and I agree, I think that you need to have something on right there for the people to be able to get to easily. But looking at the left, also, you brought up the power line, I know that doesn't go through here, but, I mean, technically, in the open, if you talk about utilities, we should say power line. And so I know that's common for developers to use that area under there, because they can't build on it, put a pathway there, don't quite tight. Councilman Carlson, but we can do a lot of stuff under there. So I think that it merits looking at that in the future, see how we clean that up.
Yeah, I think there are, certainly opportunities in the ordinance to, make this less painful for everyone.
Other questions for Mr. John or Mike on the phone, any questions?
Not here, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. All right, just for the record, the revised subdivision plat will be labeled CC 1001, for the record. Are there no further questions? Then we'll move on. Thank you, Debbie. Matthew Graham.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Matthew Graham, and I work at 332 North Broadmoor Way, Yampa, Idaho. I work for TO Engineers, and we are the design consultant for the developer of Langley Hall subdivision.
Have you been sworn in?
Oh, yes, I have been sworn in.
Okay,
Sorry.
just want to get that on the record.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
On behalf of Conifex Capital, we've applied for the annexation, the rezone, and the living plat, and lot split for the property. The proposed future subdivision is located west of Middle Boulevard between Eustic and Linden Road, shown on the map right here. And the proposed subdivision is in close proximity to a couple schools and a short drive to the Caldwell Hills Economic Center. And as was previously discussed by history, the noble drain goes, right through the middle of the subdivision. This is the original preliminary plot layout, and, we had to make a few modifications, got a few comments from staff. The landscape buffers, we didn't have them on the common driveways, and, when they were added, the minimum lot sizes weren't met, so we had to move things around a little bit to make sure that that minimum square footage was there. And, we were also working on the storm drain design, and we have elected to send the water over to this location right here. And we talked to staff, and they said that area can't be used for the common, or the open space, so we have decided to come up with a solution to try to get to work for the subdivision. The overall layout is the same, with a few minor adjustments to make sure that we meet all the requirements. Thank you. So here's the most recent layout of the proposed subdivision. We had to shift the lots around to make sure that we met the city code requirements. This piece of property is a little oddly shaped, and so we're trying to make the best of the layout that complement the city of Caldwell. All lots are this way, as shown, meet the minimum requirements of the R1 zoning. And the driveways in the previous layout were extended farther than 150 feet from the roadway center line. Talking with staff, this has been kind of interpreted differently. The code says that the driveways need to be 150 feet, but it doesn't specifically say from the roadway center line. So this layout right here, it makes a change. It meets those requirements from the center line of the road, that proposed subdivision roadway, so that we meet those requirements, and we don't have any issues with complying with staff requirements later on. Right now, the Spruce Street right here is planned to be extended to the east over the Noble Drain to provide access to the subdivision. Right at this location, we can't extend it any further because the property on the other side is currently privately owned. So, but it is planned to be extended in the future. Right now, we have the road is a cul-de-sac road, and then emergency access will be provided at this location. And like Debbie said, there would be no additional access from the residents. All residential traffic will be coming in from Spruce Street. We have the park planned near the southwest corner of the Noble Drain right here. And right now, we're currently working through the design of the storm drain, and so we try to calculate the worst case scenario where the storm drain would be. We'd like to make this kind of not look like a storm drain, but kind of be a complement area, even though it can't be used in the open space. Right now, to get the storm drain over, we've talked with Pioneer Irrigation District, and there's an existing culvert right in this location, and they believe it was something that was installed many years ago, and they would prefer to have that removed. And so what we would do is, with their permission, they say we could remove this culvert here and put in an aerial crossing across here so that we can get all the storm drainage across. We've got their approval from the irrigation district. They said, yeah, go ahead. And this Noble Drain is the Bureau of Reclamation, they have the final word on everything, so we're waiting approval from them to get that to go through. Their timeline, right now, we've put in a application for this crossing right here for the roadway, and we put in for this pathway along here, and we're still waiting approval. It can take them 6+ months just to get you a final go ahead on that, so. So the subdivision, it's a total area of 10.41 acres. The total parcel size right now is 13.99. The difference of those would be remained by the current property owner, this is vendor and his wife. They plan to retain that northern portion of the parcel, and allow for the subdivision to be constructed on the southern section as shown in that proposed layout. And then, as indicated, that lot split will take place after the property is annexed and rezoned. Property will consist of 31 lots, and the current layout complies with the gross density, the average residential lot size, and we believe that the open space requirement is directed by the city. So here's a couple portions of the Caldwell City Code that allows for the pathways to be used for open space. Staff has indicated that the pathway is within an irrigation easement and would not be allowed for the open space calculation. I guess this would make sense if the area was not maintained and had a lot of weeds, but that's not the intention. What they wanted to do is have that pathway and have some native grasses that are maintained by the HOA, so that it is complement the area. We've applied for that, like I said, we've applied for that agreement for the Bureau of Reclamation, and we're still waiting on their approval. This process, like I said, could take over 6 months, for that to come through, so we're kind of holding out on that. But right here in the general provisions, it, says that all public pathways and public pathway landscape buffers shall be outside any type of easement or irrigation district. And then it goes on to say, Boise Project Board of Control or Bureau of Reclamation, unless written permission from said entity has been specifically granted, for said pathway or pathway landscaping. So we do believe that because we've had the irrigation district, let us know that they are in favor of having a pathway and having the native grasses put in there, that we believe that it will go through. But we think that it should be allowed for that open space requirement based on what these other city codes say that pathways can be added as part of the open space. We do respectfully request to have acquiring the open space by license agreement or some other approved methods to be, condition of approval for this subdivision, so that we can go forward and make sure that, we want to make sure that we comply with all open space requirements. But the way that we're interpreting the code and based on what we've seen is that we think that pathway as that open space that connects the subdivisions to the north and to the south, that it will provide a benefit to the community. I'd like to take a moment to take a look at the comprehensive plan for this area. Here's a copy of the City of Caldwell 2040 comprehensive plan map, and this red arrow kind of indicates where the subject property is located. Kind of hard to see, but here is our subject property, and it is like a light yellow, hard to see on the projector, but this indicates an area of low density residential, and the developer plans to develop this area with R1, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's my understanding that the city has been wanting more R1 residential development, and so that's what we're planning on providing.
Ooh.
So, the developer is seeking the R1 zoning as what is shown on the comprehensive plan, and we believe that the proposed subdivision fits in well with the surrounding area. It would provide a good location for families to grow in the community and in close proximity to the surrounding schools and nearby employment centers. Thank you so much for hearing me, and I'd like to take any questions you may have right now.
Thank you. And for the record, the presentation by Matthew Graham of TL Engineers will be labeled CC 1002. Okay, questions for Mr. Graham?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Wagner?
do you by chance have any printouts of the new preliminary plat, the most of the lane? I don't think we have that in our packet, the one that you showed.
Okay.
Just so,
Yeah.
I just would like to have it, like,
Yeah, you're in our presentation. Yeah, it's included here in the presentation. This is the latest, version of that.
While he's looking for that, Mr. Graham, could I ask you a question?
Yes.
It's my understanding that you will be building park space here, and this will be the, drain, stormwater area here, but this will actually be park space?
Correct, yeah. Right now, like, we're still working to do the design on that, and so we're trying to, we're just looking kind of like a worst case scenario, but our plan is to have that area not look and feel like a storm drain pond, look more aesthetically pleasing. We don't want just a ditch that, or a storm drain area that doesn't seem to fit in, so we're gonna try to do everything we can to make it look like it fits in the area.
Other questions? So, Mr. Wagner, did you get your answer? Okay.
I have a couple questions. On your map there, in the cul-de-sac,
Mm-hmm.
you have a lot that is behind a lot that has a very narrow entryway.
Mm-hmm.
And the fire department has approved that?
So in the city code, it addresses that's considered a flag lot, and those are allowed for the city code.
The other thing that when we look at open space and park settings and whatnot, my vision is this is property that is designed to have a benefit of these residents here. Now, I do believe that your pathway has benefit to the city, but it's more for the other subdivisions that are going to, because there's, other than coming through the street, there's no access to, from the subdivision itself. And kids saying, Mom, I'm gonna go to the park, well, they're gonna go clear out the street and down the street, across the ditch and to the park. I just don't see parents allowing that to happen. So I just don't see that open space as beneficial to the subdivision. Now, I don't say it doesn't have benefits, but to the subdivision.
Right. There's going to be a sidewalk that does go all the way around and will cross this snow will drain right here. So they will have a safe way to go to get to this park area. And then also this pathway will be connected to that sidewalk, and to connect up here at this location for this adjacent subdivision, and then, would also connect up there. So it would be connecting the area together, and, there would be a path to get there that would be safe. They're not gonna be required to cross a real busy street to get there. So that answers your question there.
Well, I understand the explanation. I also understand the challenges to an infield project. I guess that's happening right now.
It's really hard, just based off the shape of this lot, or this piece of land, and then this odd shaped area right here is, trying to make everything, work properly, you know, to provide, the housing for this community, is a little bit of a challenge.
Other questions for Mr. Graham?
Yes, Mayor.
Mr. Albee?
I just wanted to confirm something. So your pathway will connect to an existing pathway that's already there now?
Right, so there's a pathway up here, here's our subdivision right here, and right now, there is a pathway along here, and then as part of this subdivision, they do have a pathway on the opposite side of the Noble Drain. As part of developing this subdivision, there's unfortunately nothing we could really do to, you know, to keep it on the same side. We looked at providing this pathway along this route, but based on the lot configuration of this parcel right here, based on right here, this lot, trying to keep that pathway within within that right of way, the way that this lot right here is shaped, it wouldn't allow us to put that pathway on the west side. But we do feel as though, that providing this crossing right here at this location, that they should be able to, you know, it does provide connectivity.
So your pathway, if it follows the east or western boundary of your property there,
So it'll be on the eastern boundaries where that
but
way.
it won't actually connect to it'll be a micro pathway all by itself. It won't actually connect to anything at either end. Am I understanding that right?
Well, there'd be a road, this roadway across here that they would have to cross, but then once they get across there, then it would connect to this
What about
pathway.
going the other direction?
Just there, yeah, there is that pathway across there. There is a small section right here that is missing, and, when we talked to staff, they were, I believe that they were going to look into, why that wasn't put in, or the reason that wasn't there, and I apologize, I don't have that answer right now, but.
Yeah, I'm just trying to put it all together on the map, see what it looks like. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Wagner?
Thank you. So I don't know if you want to label it, I didn't come with the exact map in the packet that showed the actual, got proposed to common law in front. I'm not sure if you want to label that as exhibit or not.
We should.
On it. So I guess a couple of questions. One is, and I agree with, you know, this here, the intent of the code may be met, but I do agree, it would be nice to have that open space on the other side of the Noble, and I get that there's a sidewalk, yeah, if I have, you know, my 7-year-old who's gonna go out and play, even with that sidewalk, there's no way I can go down there, without his older brother just on the fence. So I understand the concern about wanting to have it on this side, on the east side, I guess you could say the Noble Drain, for ease of access for the residents to get there. So what is maybe two questions. One, so at the north end of White Rose Place, was there any thought about, and I don't know if there's extenuating circumstances where you couldn't extend that property line a little further to the north, to maybe get a common lot at the cul-de-sac of White Rose Place down there at the end? So taking it another 20 or 30 feet north and incorporating that as usable open space, is there any consideration given to that?
So where that cul-de-sac is gonna be located, where we change the spot. Where this cul-de-sac is located, staff has indicated that in the future that this may extend to the north. And so they wanted to have this cul-de-sac set up for, if there were gonna be any future expansion that it could. So if we put a common lot right north of that cul-de-sac, then, it would theoretically could be wiped out in the future.
And the other question, and this is one that, other question that I don't regret asking, but, so the space where you're showing the qualifying open space on the west side of the Noble Drain, was there any consideration given of turning, kind of reconfiguring it, turning that into a buildable lot, and then taking one of the lots on the other side, and turning that into open space? Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, we had considered, that was something that we looked into, and possibly providing a lot right there. It's just, I believe the space requirement, I have to go back and double check, but right here, we have this road coming out here, and then you have another driveway right here. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think there was something with the space requirements for the road that you couldn't have another access right here. So this plan is a collector. So it's more of a safety issue, just reducing the amount of access to that road, because in the future, it's going to be pretty busy.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Graham?
Mr. Mayor,
Sir?
these are not necessarily questions, but these are things that concern me about this development. Again, the open space, I think, is part of it. I think even down the road, having your common area being so removed from the rest of the residents, even the HOA would have difficulty deciding how to maintain that and doing it in a way that makes it what we want it to be. I know that having the storm drainage adjacent to that is intended to be a play area. We've had issues with that before, and it's part of the reason why drainage areas were not supposed to be part of the common area. I think, in fact, in this area, there's not too far to the west, we have storm drainage areas that never drain, and we've had lots of complaints and issues with those. I think John is well aware of that. I'm concerned about Spruce, being only one way in, not having any solution for how we're going to get to Midland with that. I think by taking this piece of property out of that mix, not only does it hurt our ability to get Spruce all the way to Midland, but improving Midland itself to handle the traffic that we generate in this area. That's a concern for me. So it's not necessarily a bad plan, but it takes out a chunk of land that with other developments could be a bigger, better thing. I'm not quite sure doing this right here benefits the area. Just my comments.
Brett, did you raise your hand, or were you? Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was starting my. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Graham. I thought he was raising his hand.
Okay.
I apologize.
No worries. Yeah, I understand your concerns. Right now, sorry I didn't say this earlier, but this property is bounded by, an irrigation, private lateral right here. So the Pioneer Irrigation District, they have their water that comes up through here, and then these are private laterals. So we're kind of bounded on this side with the irrigation, where it's currently located. And then, as far as extending Spruce out to Midland, right now, these property owners, it's currently privately owned. So we can't force their hand into connecting to Midland. It's kind of out of, until these parcels, plan to develop, there's really nothing that we can do on that end. It makes it really difficult for us, and then, if we ask them if we wanna put a road through here, they're gonna ask us for $1 million on it, so
What's the problem?
Right, I understand, but the future plan has this road going through here, but as right now for the development, we wouldn't be able to acquire that land for that. Like I said, it is an odd shaped parcel, and so we try to do the best we can to make this layout, nice as we can. The lot sizes are very, pretty large, 8,000 square feet, which is pretty substantial, I think, complies with the R1. And so I think that what we have really provides a great place for, future residents in this area.
Again, just to be clear, Jeremy, in response to your request, I do have on my evidence list CC 1001 as the revised subdivision plan. Do you have that as well? Okay, so I already did label it, just, went back and looked at my list and it is already labeled, so, but thank you for the question. Any other questions for Mr. Graham? Okay, inasmuch as Mr. Graham is the only person who has signed up to speak at this public hearing, I guess I have to offer you the right to rebut anything you just said.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have anybody else signed up to speak.
Oh, I'm the developer, so.
Oh, okay,
Is it okay if we have him speak on my behalf?
okay, so do you, we'll have to swear you in, I'll have to have you sign up if you would, real quick, please. You probably just assumed you could do that because you were the developer, so. If you would just sign in right there, and then the clerk will swear you in. All right, just go ahead and raise your right hand, and the clerk will swear you in.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you give tonight is truthful, truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
Thanks for your time, guys, tonight. We think this is a really good project. All we're asking for is for you guys, for clarity on the code. And because our reading of the code is very plain, the code seems to be very plain. Looking at section 10705B, says that micro pathways, paved forests are acceptable open space. Same thing with major pathways, this counts as open space based on the code. And we're working on that license agreement, so, we get approval from DOR, and so we really just want to provide the best thing we can, given the shape of the parcel, and we're also following compliance with code. We're providing, counting all of this, as like 8% open space versus the required 6%. Like connectivity, and we're trying to connect to other people as well, so. My 2 comments, it's just, we're complying with the code based on what's supposed to be, not pretty.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Questions, Mr. Paul?
So right now, you're putting all your eggs in one basket on the approval from the irrigation district, right?
We feel very confident. We've had a number of conversations with DOR and the irrigation district. We feel very confident that it will be approved. And I would simply ask tonight that you would make that a condition of our approval, is receiving a license agreement through DOR.
Just allow me to play devil's advocate here for just a second. If the approval does not come through, can this subdivision afford to lose like 2 lots to create that open area?
I guess the challenge, of course, is that, I feel like forcing us to continue to do the pathway, which is a requirement by staff, and then losing 2 lots to create additional open space is a double dipping and a taking that we're being uncompensated for.
I don't know that I see it that direction myself, because there is, again, no connectivity other than clear out the street for this subdivision.
It is a part of the subdivision, and I'm happy to provide a micro path, down one of the roads that interconnect and have it go out through the pathway. Go back. So,
There's a pointer on that, right, the red line.
provide some sort of connectivity to that. Via Ethernet.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Jenke? All right, thank you, sir. All right. Again, that concludes everyone who has signed up to speak. Are there any final questions for either Mr. Graham or Mr. Jenke or staff? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to close the public testimony portion of the hearing? Thank you. A motion by Mr. Wagner, is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Alden to close the public testimony portion of the hearing. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Then that would begin the decision-making process. I would like to first start off again reminding council and those in the audience that the evidence list will apply to both the annexation action as well as the subdivision. For purposes of process, the annexation decision will be made first. If the annexation is approved, then we would move to the subdivision. If the annexation is not approved, then the subdivision becomes a move. So we would not move to a decision on that. So I will first read the evidence list and ask for council's consideration to approve the evidence list, and it will be both for the annexation as well as the subdivision. I have the staff report, sign-up sheets, the aerial of ANN 22 SUB 20P03, CC 1000, which is the staff presentation by Debbie Root, CC 1001, which is the revised subdivision plat, and then CC 1002, which is the presentation by Matthew Graham. Did I have anything else there? Okay, is there a motion to approve the evidence list? So, Mr. Aldridge made a motion to approve the evidence list as presented. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Carlson. Any further discussion on the evidence list? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Mr. Pollard, Mr. McGee? Pick up yourself, because it sounds like...
Can't you hear me now?
Pardon? Okay. All right. The evidence list has been approved unanimously by the Colorado City Council. I would then move to case number ANN 0202 and ask for council's comprehensive plan analysis.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Wagner.
I think motion that the Colorado City Council accept the comprehensive plan components as listed in staff report under 5.1, beginning on page 1438.
Okay, is there a second? Second. I have a motion by Mr. Wagner, a second by Mr. Aldridge to accept the comprehensive plan analysis as outlined in the staff report for ANN 20-02. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. I would ask for council's findings of fact on ANN 20-02.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Aldridge.
City Council accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used and evaluated in the application.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. A motion by Mr. Aldridge, second by Mr. Wagner to approve the findings of fact as outlined by Mr. Aldridge. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. I would ask for council's conclusions of law.
It's not going. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Aldridge.
Colorado City Council has the authority to hear this case. In order to be approved or denied, the public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code City Ordinance.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Aldridge to approve conclusions of law. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Wagner. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. I would then ask for council's order of decision on ANN 20-02.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Wagner?
I'm just, I think because we don't have the maps on, it's easier for us to talk. So I'm gonna explain for that, kind of go into a little bit further than annexation, just because we can together, but this is not a simple deal for me, I don't think for anybody here. We love infill parcels, I think, to be developed, but this one is on a scale for sure, it's not an easy guess, it's all great, we're for it, we'll do it, it's kind of, well, these things are really good, these things not so much, and so for me, it's kind of, weighing, I guess, the balance, on the issue of which way does it tip, more of that. I think given with the fact that it is an infill parcel, given the fact that it has site constraints, with an open drain going through part of it already, that is a difficult piece to develop. I think it's possible, I still think it needs a little bit of help to work, I think we can work through that through some conditions, and then leave it up to the developer, in that regard, to meet those or if it doesn't work for him. But for that, it does tip for me in the side of approving, the annexation, so that I would, make a motion, that based on the findings of fact, and the conclusions of law, the city council hereby orders that case number ANN 2002, requested by Chio Engineers, to annex parcel R 34340010B, 14 acres with a zone designation of R1 single family residential, be approved with the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Thank you. A motion for approval of the annexation. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Alden?
is it possible to add to Mr. Wagner's statement a little bit?
We have a motion on the floor, so technically, there's either a second or not. You can let the motion die for lack of a second and propose an alternate motion, or you can go back and ask for a friendly amendment and see if he'll change the motion.
Mr. Mayor, are you asking for an amendment or just to talk on the?
Just to talk, clarify what you're talking about.
Okay, then I need a second first, and then we can go to discussion.
Okay, second.
Okay, we have a second, discussion. Mr. Alden?
The developer said, when he was up there speaking, that he would put an internal connection to the pathway, not having to go out to the street. Does everybody else understand that?
So we would list that during the preliminary plot, this is for annexation.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, I was thinking that myself.
Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We'll go change the motion to approve as described in the staff report and the conditions therein. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Wagner,
Yes.
Hopper,
No.
Colton,
No.
Pollard,
No.
McGee,
Yes.
Alden.
Yes.
Okay, I believe the motion carried 4-2. The annexation has been approved, and let's go back then to the SUV 2003. And again, the evidence list has already been approved.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure those were.
Yeah, got Jerome Wagner, Chris Allgood, McGee, and Pollard, all said yes. Yes.
Okay.
No, Mayor Collins said no.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I heard you say yes.
I think.
Okay, then that leaves it up to me. My vote is no. There are too many holes in this one for me to say it didn't meet what we're trying to do yet. And so I would say no, and so the motion fails. And again, my main concern is there's no open space whatsoever inside this subdivision. And a stormwater, pond is not open space as far as I'm concerned. And then you have a barrier for the canal on getting to it, so that would be my reasons for voting no. I think it can be fixed. I think that, there's ways to make it work, but under the current things, I would vote no.
Mr. Mayor, I would agree with your statement. I think this is a, fair, infill project, but we all know that with infill projects, there are problems. And one of the problems here is the drainage law.
And it's connectability from the main, that's the main thing. So I just wanted to explain my vote. I don't normally get to vote, but in this case I do, and so I will vote that way. So that there's no need then to go through SUB 2303, is there a motion then to close this public hearing? A motion by Mr. Carlson, second by Mr. Hopper. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. That means that action item number 2, consider bill number 15, which is the companion document, is also no longer needed. Also, that this can be appealed, there's a 28-day appeal period. The order of decision will be rendered at the next city council meeting, and 28 days after that for an appeal to be filed. So until that time, the, council members and myself are, under the ex parte communication law, but staff can certainly be contacted. So if you have questions or ways to, bring this back, based upon what we heard tonight in the public hearing, they certainly can be contacted. The city council members cannot, nor myself, for the 28 days after the ex parte communication. That concludes item numbers 1 and 2 under old business. New business item, item number 1, which is a appeal hearing. This is also quasi judicial, is that correct, Mr. Waterman? Okay. So I'll explain how that is to be heard. This is a little unusual, so if I say anything that's not correct, Mr. Waterman, would you please correct me as we go forward? This is an appeal hearing to consider code enforcement appeal case number 2001, a request by Tim Rainbolt pursuant to City Code 10-207-5 to overturn the decision of the Apollo Code Enforcement Officer concerning the status of a fence as a legal non-conforming fence located at 2424 Fairview Avenue, Caldwell. So again, in a quasi-judicial public hearing, you have to be signed up to speak over here to my right. If you would like to speak at the public hearing, you will be sworn in here shortly, including staff, and the clerk will swear you in. The process will go as first as the case, the hearing will be open. I'm assuming in this case, staff will make their presentation first, is that correct, Mr. Waterman? And then and Mr. Rainbolt will be able to make his presentation, correct? And then, if there's any other folks that have signed up to speak, one way or the other, then we will take that testimony in the order in which they have signed up to speak. And then, of course, a decision would be made at the end, either to uphold the decision of the enforcement officer, to overturn the decision of the enforcement officer, or I suppose they could continue this to a time and date certain and gather more information. Is that correct? Okay. All right, just want to make sure that I describe.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Pollard?
I'm not feeling well, so I hope you'll excuse me from attending the rest of the meeting.
Certainly. We hope you feel better, and sorry that you're not feeling well.
And would you ask Mr. Ugly to do finance report for me today?
Yes, he gave me a thumbs up, and we'll be happy to do that. We're sorry you're not feeling well.
Thank you.
Okay, that still leaves us a quorum, and so we can continue forward with the items on the rest of the agenda. So again, if you are signed up to speak for hearing, item number 1 under new business, if you would please stand, raise your right hand, and the clerk will swear you in.
Do you swear affirm that testimony you provide tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, you've all been sworn in. As we call you forward, if you could give us your name and address for the record, and acknowledge you've been sworn in. All right. Let's see here. All right, Katie.
Katie Phillips, 621 Cleveland Boulevard. I acknowledge that I've been sworn in.
Welcome.
Thank you. So, code enforcement staff received a complaint about a fence that was erected that was obstructing vision. We went through the code enforcement process, the property owner was notified, and the property owner was notified of their right to appeal, and then to appeal the code enforcement decision of moving the new fence to meet the current city code setback. An existing non-conforming fence was removed and replaced. The fence was also extended closer to Fairview Avenue, and it is now in the Mission Triangle area. The old fence and the new fence was and is located in the city right of way.
In its current location, fence closes the safety hazard to traffic, pulling off the Linden from Fairview Avenue. The fence should be a minimum setback to the non-conforming location when it was changed or meet current city code requirements, and at least should immediately be removed out of the vision triangle.
Okay, so if you, this, I assume this picture is the old fence?
That is the legal non-conforming fence. That's a picture of the corner, and you can see the legal non-conforming fence at the time. And then this is the newly placed fence that's taken from Linden. And then that's taken from Fairview when you're looking at it.
And what was the height of the original fence?
I think it was somewhere between 5 and 5.5 feet.
Okay, the new fence is 6 feet.
So this is, Google Street View from 2011, just showing the front of 2424 Fairview. This is also, a photo from Google from 2011, showing the corner, a lot easier to see to turn on to Linden. And again, it was legal non-conforming fence, so, it was fine. Another shot of that's 2019 Google, photo on the corner of Linden and Fairview. This is an aerial view showing basically the property line. You can see how it goes in past those trees there. And the fence is directly on the curb.
So
That is the fence today.
And so, if you go back that one, so the property line is there, and so that area between the property line and the curb and gutter is public easement or?
Right away.
Right away, okay.
Right away. This is just a photo showing the new fence in its existence. This is where the current fence sits now compared to the corner of the property. And that's just a little telescoped out view of it. Yeah, that's the view, the camera zoomed in, that's the view you get from that corner now, the stop line. Yeah, question? You're done?
Okay, first, I do have a couple questions for you. Was there a permit required to build this fence?
No.
Okay, so there was no permitting process? Okay. And then secondly, in the code complaint, what did you ask them to do as a resolution?
Move the fence back to the 10-foot setback.
To the original location?
No, the non-conforming fence was against the curb as well, but the fact that it was extended toward Fairview, it extended further with the 6 feet toward Fairview, and then into the vision triangle area. So the request was to meet current setbacks and move that fence in from the curb to 10 feet, as required by code.
Mr. Waterman, are you going to be a part of the staff report?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any further questions for Ms. Phillips? Ms. Welby?
So there's basically two issues. Because the height of the fence, it violates the 40-foot triangle. And then on top of that, on the Linden Street side, it also is in the right of way, doesn't have the 10-foot setback.
So the old fence was legal non-conforming, it didn't meet current city code.
Right.
And if the fencing would have been replaced where the old fence was, it would have basically stayed legal non-conforming. But because the fence was extended closer to Fairview to make the backyard bigger,
Right.
it lost its legal non-conforming status. Then, therefore, it has to meet current city limits.
So the shrubbery you see there, based on your being, you were out there, is that correct? Is all that shrubbery in the right of way as well?
Yeah, technically, but it's behind the mud fence.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Phillips? Mr. Mayor? Ms. Wagner? You have to take advantage, she doesn't come very often, so. Couple good questions. So, just so I understand it clearly, so to uphold the code enforcement action and have them place the fence, everyone in the fence, is it 6 feet, 10 feet back, from the curb
There's no other sidewalk.
on that? So, and that'd be for the entire length of the fence, correct? Could they do like a 5 foot and 3 foot?
That would be
along
up
there?
to council.
Very good, okay. Other questions for Ms. Phillips? Thank you. Mr. Water?
Waterman, the attorneys, I addressed before went to be asking them Idaho, and I acknowledge that I've been sworn in.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you. So, a quick clarifying point, the code does contemplate that new fence regulations will create legal non-conforming fences, which basically means the fence that was allowed to exist at some point in the past, when we did the code change, it's no longer compliant with code, but it has the right to be there when it was put in. And so it has a right to continue. With this, unfortunately, the fence is in the right of way, and I am not aware of any licensing agreement, which means it was not a legal fence to begin with, because it's not on the appellant's property. So, conceptualizing it as legal non-conforming, doesn't quite fit perfectly smoothly, and, I extend my apology back to Katie if I was unclear in communicating that with her, previously. The issue before council tonight is whether or not code enforcement made the right call. If, regardless of the way council decides the code enforcement appeal question, in order for the fence to stay where it is, would require additional work from staff, because some sort of encroachment agreement would have to, if staff, granted the appeal, it would still require some sort of, right-of-way encroachment agreement, because that fence is in city right-of-way. Additionally, if the fence were to be moved back to the property line, if council decides that, yes, code enforcement made the right decision, the fence needs to be moved somewhere back to the property line at some location, that particular movement of the fence at a location would require a variance, which would require a variance application and a variance hearing notification of property owners, et cetera. I think for tonight, the most beneficial thing will be if council views this appeal sort of strictly within the confines of the appeal and make the decision on that. And then after the closure of public hearing, if council wants to provide staff with some direction on how to resolve whatever issues may exist after a decision is made, that could be beneficial to staff determining how they can move forward. But the code does not provide a lot of explicit criteria for how to make a decision. It just says if a fence exists that does not comply with code and can be demanded that it be taken down, the individual who owns the fence can appeal that to council. So that's what this is. So, because again, the scope is, did code enforcement make the right call? Unfortunately, there are a number of sort of levers in play here that may have to be worked before a resolution to the actual practical issue is achieved, but, the question before you is, did code enforcement make the right call? Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Waterman? Mr. Carlson?
Mr. Waterman, with what you just said, what we're dealing with is, the law enforcement officer make a correct call. I understand that. Is it within the staff authority to recommend to this family, possibilities of what could be done between here and there?
So,
Such as variances, this and that?
Mayor, Councilman, Carlson, yes, if, and I don't want to suppose, so, I'll take your hypothetical, which supposes that the fence is in a location where it's not allowed to be, because otherwise the fence would just stay there. So, if that hypothetical were true, then yes, staff has a number of tools such as variances or right-of-way agreements that could be discussed. Some of those, like a variance, right-of-way license agreement, require council approval, so you can see them again. But those things are not necessary if code enforcement made the wrong decision and the fence is allowed to stay where it is. If code enforcement is correct, then those are tools that we use to resolve the issue, yes. I hope that answers the question.
If I could have a couple follow-ups then. For code enforcement, why would code enforcement notify us?
Well, Mayor, Councilman Carlson, code enforcement was notified because of the inability, my understanding, the inability to see because of the vision triangle, which was generated by a change in fence, height, wide, and elevation.
But it was it not also a complaint that's initiated?
Mayor, Councilman Carlson, that's my understanding, yes.
Okay. And so, even if the fence was non-compliant for X amount of years, and just because code enforcement was never had a complaint on it, that doesn't necessarily make it right, does it?
So, Mayor, Councilman Carlson, yes, you're correct. Here's the odd nuance. The fence that is pre-existing and a legal non-conforming fence, meaning it had a right to be there, even though the code has changed. It can continue as long as maintained and not moved. In this case, the realization that the fence was in the right of way occurred after the complaint came in, and after this was looked at to see if the fence was indeed in the same location. So, you are correct that a fence can exist that is not compliant with code, that has a legal non-conforming right to continue existing, and continue being maintained, in its present location and condition. But that is predicated on, first, it being legal to begin with when it was put in place, and also that it is maintained in the same location, height, and sort of form. Because the property had the right to continue that use in its condition at the time the code was changed, but it's not a right to have a fence anywhere, just in that one spot, that way. So, and I apologize if I'm sort of rambling here, but the two things are, first, yes, our code enforcement is complaint driven, which means there may be other places in the city where there's a fence where it shouldn't be. The city's not addressing any concerns with the complaints about it, as the method by which code enforcement approaches things, is my understanding, and he gave quite clarification on that. Anyway, I think that was just an A and B, but I think that was the entirety of what I meant to say.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me repeat that, so if I make sure that it's not in legalese. The fence was never a legal non-conforming use because it was built in the right of way without a right of way agreement. Is that what you're saying?
Mayor, that appears to be true.
Okay, and so if the main issue here was that because it was extended into the vision triangle, it became a safety issue, which then generated a complaint, which then this was all discovered. Is that correct? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and so it was the safety issue that you were complaining about, Katie, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure I got all the facts here, so that I'm hearing the same thing. Thank you, I think that, I understood that, okay. Any other questions for Mr. Waterman? Okay, Mr. Orton?
Mr. Mayor, just a point for the record as well, that both city code and state statute do prohibit the placement of side obstructions in the vision triangle.
Both city code and state code, is that what you said? Okay. I'm sorry, the math thing sometimes is hard to hear. Okay, and so I assume you all have put on the map what the vision triangle would be?
Yes, and take a note that the map is skewed here, the rendering on the projector is skewed, so that's why this 40 feet looks a lot longer than this 40 feet, but it's also stretching everything else.
Okay.
So this would be where, approximately where that would be at the apparent intersection of the curb line, and you go 40 feet back and cross and draw a line between.
Thank you. And I'm assuming, Mr. Waterman, that I also, there needs to be an evidence list for this as well?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so for the record then, we will label, the display by Mr. Morgan as CC 1000 regarding the vision triangle. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Waterman? Thank you, sir. Heidi Rainbow? Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Should I give you my address?
Name, address, and then you've been sworn in, please.
Heidi Rainbow, 2424 Fairview Avenue, Caldwell, Idaho, and I have been sworn.
You must pull that microphone down just a bit. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, so before I even begin, I don't have the whole up picture, I just want to get some thoughts, but looking at that picture there, the fence lines up with the front of our house, and that would technically look like where it needs to be and for the 40-foot triangle. The fence now lines up with the front of our house. So to me, it would go straight across. So the fence that is along Linden, was not moved, and it's very, like, upsetting to me that it's saying that it was. The fence that was there, we bought the home about 2.5 years ago. It was along, and it was behind those trees. And I have pictures of the trees and how tall they are. The trees were probably 20, 30 years old. We did not move the fence out towards Linden. We went along the exact same fence line. In fact, we wouldn't even have room to move it out because of where the trees are. We have a previously built storage shed, on the back behind the patio there that is on a foundation. That only gives maybe 3 feet from the storage shed to the fence. Between that are the trees that are so old, and there's nowhere we could have moved the fence. It's been on that line the entire time. The previous fence was extremely old. It was falling over into Linden. Every time we had a windstorm or a heavy snowstorm, we would have to go out and pull it back in. The previous owners had bungee corded the fence to the existing trees. So that's how they held it up, and we've been saving it, for 2 years since we bought the house to do this project. We've done many things to, just make a better face to the home, and that was one of the biggest projects that we've done so far. We didn't know that you had to, contact the city. We've had a lot of neighbors that we're friends with stop by and say how beautiful it looks, and we take a lot of pride in our home. And we spend a lot of money making it look nice. Our fence does provide security for our home and our children. As you can see, we have an in-ground pool. and also a Great Dane. So it keeps our children in and our Great Dane in, and, we do feel like having a pool, with the existing fence, it was like the odd slats that are kind of like this. We just feel like people were peering in often, and that just is another security feature for our family, as we're enjoying our yard. The cost to build the fence was approximately $1,650. As I stated before, we have been saving for that, and we're pretty proud to be able to build that with our savings. Because we follow the same fence line along Linden, my husband or I never considered it to be an issue or a violation. In fact, the posts that we put in pretty much lined up with the posts that were already there, just moved down maybe a foot for the cement to be able to go in. As far as the extending it out towards Fairview, we did do that. Again, I never considered it to be a violation or a safety issue. I do have pictures that my husband and I took today as he would pull out from Fairview towards Linden. And you can see, in my opinion, perfectly, there is a power pole that's existing there. That would be on the corner. That's the only thing that really inhibits your view as you're turning, obviously looking right to turn left onto Linden. It's a pretty clear view. Yeah, I guess that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Reingold?
And we have pictures too, if anybody wants to see what it looks like from the view pulling out. The one that she has put up there was enlarged by the.
I can certainly enter those as evidence. I have to keep
You want them all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just pass them around.
Okay.
Thank you. And what Ms. Reingold has presented to me are pictures that I will label CC 1001.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
Ms. Reinhold, how much of the fence did you, I'm assuming your entire backyard is enclosed? How much of the fence did you replace?
So from that corner down here, the Caldwell picture, at that corner is where it was falling over, the fence was, falling over, so we replaced it all the way down, and then went across.
So just one section of your backyard is?
So, essentially the backyard that way, and then going this way, there was also a gate just to enter into the backyard, where that big tree is showing. So it went along there, and that's where we replaced the fence as well.
Okay. So the largest part of your fencing is still the old fencing?
Along the back of our house, none of that's been changed.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Reingold? Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Tim Reingold?
I'm not sure I have much to say, actually, clear enough. Well, I'm Tim Ringgold, I live off 2424 Fairview Ave, and I have been sworn in.
Welcome, Mr. Reingold, go ahead.
So, I heard, Chris talk about the street side over there.
I think there's a pointer there on the, there you go.
Okay, so, I don't understand what this line is indicating here. Is this the property that they're telling me that is not my property? Because see these trees right here? These trees are probably about 40 feet tall. I guarantee these trees lived here for 30 to 40 years. I guarantee the fence was there for 30 to 40 years. This property right here, this is where this fence had been when we purchased the house. Right along here, not over here. They're wanting me to move this fence from Linden back 5 feet. I don't have 5 feet. I would have to have these trees cut down. I have other things going on right now to cut down 5 trees that are, 50 feet tall. You're talking about having to block this road off just to cut this trees down. Pretty much what I'm getting at is I just built the fence along here, right where the old fence was. I didn't move anything. I just built the new fence. It's all in place.
Did you extend it?
I extended it right over here, yes I did. This is the only part that I changed. I did extend it to make my backyard bigger. And I probably went out about 10 feet. As far as the view goes, you had one person with a bad day that wasn't minding their business come up here and say, oh, you know what, I'm gonna turn them in. I don't have a problem turning down this corner. I don't think any of my neighbors do. So, I mean, I guess if it's an issue, you move back 10 feet. Each post has 80 pounds of cement in them. There's a total of 18 posts through everything that they pushed out. I went a total of 8 feet and did a post every 8 feet, yeah. 8 feet. I built that fence myself. So time, you know, I work a lot. I did it during vacation. I did this in May, and like I didn't get a notice till June, I believe. I want to say June. So, I mean, it took a while for somebody to complain. One complaint. That's a very busy road. Cars drive by and my fence is blowing like that. That's why they had bungee corded to the tree, so it had to be rebuilt. They're saying the old fence is grandfathered in. Now that I built a new one, it's not grandfathered in. So I'm not quite sure I agree with that. I live right next to Wilson Elementary, so I get a lot of kids wandering around, going down my neighborhood. This pool right here, that fence was probably a little over 5 feet tall, the old fence. And you can see right in it, so I just built it like a normal fence. I did go up 6 feet. I have measurements of the old flats, but I still have which are in those pictures. They were so rotted at the bottom, and they went up a little over 5 feet. For whatever reason, they cut the dog ears off the top. No. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Rainbow. And just to clarify your question, what these lines signify is this is public right of way. Yes, it's still your property, but when this was built and deeded, they deeded public right of way to the city. And you can see the sidewalk is about the same length as what that setback is right there.
Okay.
So what that is for is if at some point in time, either you chose to build sidewalk, that's where it would go. You can see sidewalk on both corners. And again, you see that this is right of way on both properties. And so again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will ever be used, but if it is necessary to be used, it was needed at some point in time to the city as public right of way.
So there's no plans I've asked on this side, because this is, I can't remember the exact measurements, but it's over 120 feet long, I believe. That's a lot of it. I asked if there was plans for them to build, a sidewalk right here at any time, when I got fined or notified of my fence, and there's not. So I don't see a problem in that really staying there. There's no issue on this Linden side with anybody's team, and all you're doing is passing by. You know, that's it. It's just, I'm not sure.
I'm just trying to answer your question.
Yeah, no, I asked about that and was wondering what those lines mean, so, okay.
And so public right of way is still owned by the underlying property owner, and it's their responsibility to maintain it until it becomes such a time where the city needs it to use for sidewalk or whatever else, correct?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, as long as there's no structure built or anything.
Right, Mr. Mayor, so it is, so in this case, this is a fee simple right of way, so it is actually technically an owned right of way.
Okay, I apologize then. Thank you for the
In these
clarification.
cases, though, there are prescriptive rights of way, which are still owned by the property owner. In that case, this line would be shown out in the street.
Thank you for the clarification. That's why the city engineer is here. I knew it was right of way, but.
So the city can come in at any time and take that property with it. It's at a cost to me that you would have to pay me, because I paid, when I bought this house, this is all what I paid for it. So how does that work if the city comes in and decides, I'm gonna build something right here? Do they pay me for that land at what it's worth at that time?
Mr. Mayor.
Good.
So that previously happened. At some point in time, this property was dedicated as public right of way. And so if you look at your documents when you bought your home, you'll see that that's excluded from the legal description that describes the property purchase. The mayor made the point that the landscaping ordinance, city code requires us as owners of the property to maintain, and gives us the privilege of maintaining that right of way on the frontage. And technically, in a modern subdivision, you would find that there is a space of public right of way, usually 5.5 feet from the back of the sidewalk. And that accommodates water meters, fire hydrants, street lights, all in the public right of way, so they can still be maintained by the city, but the owner has the privilege of using that, you know, and, but the short answer to your question is yes, if the city needed to widen the street, or if the city put in a sidewalk, the city would give you notice, and under city code, you would have, the city is obligated to give you 5 days notice to remove that. So, that's,
I guess, consider whenever you guys make a deal about these trees, you know, it's gonna be a while before I'll ever get to something like this, tearing those fences down. You know, we're talking cost. I'm gonna go out there with grinders and cut brand new posts off that are, you know, $15 a post. I mean, we're talking a lot of money here for something that was already there for 30 plus years. Okay, this up here, I did change. I went 10 feet forward to line up with my house. This over here is never gonna change, just a new fence.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Rainbow. And Brent, thanks for the clarification. Cassandra Crowe?
My name is Cassandra Crowell, and I live at 2806 of Lowell Place in Caldwell, and my daughter is Kylie Rainbow.
I'm smiling underneath the fence here.
Yeah. Underneath my neck. I just want to make,
I'm sorry, Cassandra, have you been sworn in?
I have been sworn in.
Thank you, just want to get that out there.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to make, highlight on a couple things. First of all, my husband did help build the fence, so he kind of had a vested interest in, the fence here. I substitute teach at Wilson, so quite often I will stop at their house when I'm, leaving Wilson School. Never had a problem being able to see to turn back down Fairview from that direction. I'm probably at their house about every day or every other day, and leaving to go back to my house down Linden. I've never had a problem getting to see, going out of Fairview either. I think the swimming pool issue is very extreme because, like they said, when the fence was kind of leaning over, I think we all kind of worried, well, with, you know, little kids, when they see a swimming pool, they want to go in and take a dive. So I think the tall fence really assists in the safety of the neighborhood, because the children, other than the neighbors that play with their kids, can't be in there to see the pool. So, they won't be tempted to go try to go swimming. Also, they're Great Danes, stand very tall. If she jumped and the fence was any lower, she could possibly scale the fence. I don't know, we've never seen her do it, but she is very quite tall. They are very proud owners of their home. They've done numerous upgrades just in the 2.5 years they've lived there. They did a lot of landscaping, put up the new fencing. It looks beautiful. I encourage all of you to drive by and look at it for yourself and check it out from the corner to see if you can get onto Linden with no problem. I think you would, if it was voted, against them or that they had to move the fence, I think you would be doing a disservice to them after putting out as much money and time. Because if we included in the labor that it took to put the fence up, it probably would be closer to like $4,000. Because they had at least 3 or 4 people helping with that most of the time. I also think it would be a disservice to their neighbors, because the yard and the fence are gorgeous. I think we'd be doing a disservice to Caldwell, because we're trying to make it look better and more appealing for people moving in. Our family's been here for at least 60-plus years, and, we do believe in improving the neighborhood. People love Caldwell. The one issue I did see with the last, photo that Katie showed, where she said it was zoomed in, that did not look accurate to me at all. Because where their fence comes off the side of the house, my husband, who's been doing roofing with my son's business, he measured it, and he said that is not a correct 40-foot triangle. So I think that does need to be reconfigured. I don't think that was correct. I believe that's all I have to say, but thank you all. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Any questions for Cassandra? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, that is everyone who has testified. Are there any questions for staff or for, anyone who's testified? Okay, Mr. Waterman, I'm gonna jump out on a limb here and I don't get to vote on this because there's now 5, even if it did come to me, but I'm gonna make a suggestion. And I think I'm gonna explain it carefully enough that so that everybody will understand. First of all, we have codes that are responsible to uphold. Everybody up here took an oath and said we will uphold the laws and ordinances of the city of Caldwell, and whatever's on the books, until we change them on the codes, correct? So then we have a code enforcement officer who is assigned to go out and when we receive complaints, to evaluate those codes and bring back any apparent code violations to this body. In my opinion, what Katie has done is correct. If there's a safety violation and it's still within the vision triangle, it's not our code, it's state code as well as city code that says you cannot build structures in the vision triangle. We do have the ability to enter into agreements for folks who have structures within the right-of-way as long as we enter into an agreement. And my glasses keep fogging up, I can't see. I'm going to pull this down for a minute. So here's a suggestion. I think the appropriate action is to uphold the decision of the code enforcement officer, because I think she did make the right decision. But there's also the human side of this and the fact that they invested and did things and they thought they were doing things the right way. So my suggestion would be to uphold the decision of the code enforcement officer, to direct staff to go back and measure what exactly is, and this is probably the least painful way to fix it, is if the vision triangle is here, then just build the fence at an angle and do this, so it complies with the vision triangle. Very minor adjustments to the fence. And again, I'm sorry, that would be an adjustment to the fence, but it would be minor. There's no question that the fence is a beautiful addition to the neighborhood, from the pictures. I don't think anybody's complaining about that. But the fact still remains, it is in the public right-of-way. So the way to overcome that is to enter into an agreement allowing that fence to be there. But again, the unfortunate thing is, if 25 years from now the city needs to widen Linden, they have the right to do that at that point in time. But at least it would allow this fence to stay here, enhance the neighborhood. You fix the triangle by just adjusting the fence. If it isn't, Cassandra, if it isn't 40 feet, then we can go out and measure that and figure it out. But there is a very clear code that says you cannot encroach into that 40-foot vision triangle. So you can adjust the fence and leave it and enter into an agreement to have it in the structure in the right-of-way, and that would be a solution that is kind of a compromise that meets the intent of the law, because you eliminate the vision triangle. And again, this is up to council. I don't get to vote on it. I'm just throwing out a suggestion there that says the fence stays until such time the road is widened or sidewalk needs to be put in or whatever else, and then that's a different scenario. But that's a suggestion. I'll be quiet.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Carlson.
I have to agree with you. She got a complaint, she followed the rules that we have set up. The vision triangle starts out of the state code, and so we follow suit with that. And so it is something that we just, we have to follow the state anyway. I like the idea of finding a mutual agreed on solution for this that, solves the problem, as you stated, and I truly do support that.
Any other thoughts? Mr. Waterman, first of all, is there anything I said that is not legal or possible to do?
Mayor, Council, no, I think that's fine. I think staff will want to give some thought to whether or not it's going to require a variance, which might require one more official action, notice to property owners. But what you outlined sounds good to me, it sounds legal to me.
And I certainly don't intend to sidestep any law. I mean, if it requires a variance hearing, then, I'm not suggesting that we don't have that. I'm just suggesting what appears to be a possible solution that meets the safety requirements and allows them to, again, have a fence in the right of way, but with an agreement that allows it to be there so that it needs to go away. They know that, everybody knows that it's institutionalized, and future councils or future mayors would have that agreement in their commission.
Mr. Mayor.
Schweigen.
I appreciate the comments, there may, this is a tough situation. I know there were several times we would run out, when I worked in planning and zoning, if we saw somebody building a fence, we would literally get out there as quick as we could, because we know the headache that goes into that, if you have to replace it or move it, in that regard. So these are always tough to, and I appreciate your comments and concerns in regards to that, and I understand what the vision triangle, but I think we also have to look at, there's two parts. There's the vision triangle, but there's also the code that says you cannot have a fence, on the curb, when you're on the corner lots are really tough. The code, I think, is pretty clear, in that regard, and it hurts, I know, and the fact that these are never fun, but I think, that we have to look also, long-term, not just for this property, but all the properties, along the property across the street, you could say the same thing, and then they would have that ability to push their fence out to the curb, and the next person down, so you could have this trickle effect. And the variance, I get that, but, variances are very clear, you cannot create your own hardship. So those sometimes are really difficult to get approved unless you have, extenuating circumstances that you would not create yourself, that are not financial reasons. So that could be a tough road to go as well. So, I may be the odd man out. I wish, my heart bleeds to say yes and let it stay, but, looking at the code, looking at, the fairness to all the properties across the city, I think it would need to comply with the standards. I think where we could try to provide some lenience would be timing. You don't have to go do this tomorrow, you'll provide them even several months to get out and get that relocated. The vision triangle, get that done as soon as possible, but the rest of it across, give them some time. I think that's where we could be lenient and still comply with the code, but those are just my concerns and my thoughts in regards to the matter.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hoffman.
I guess I have a question for legal. Should we go through the variance process and grant some sort of variance on the fence along, and then, is that binding to only the current property owners? Is it binding on the property forever? What happens with that variance on property exchange?
So, the variance itself, Mayor, Councilmember, my understanding of the variance itself could have some conditions, one of which could be the, right-of-way licensing agreement. So, even if council were, if a variance were to be obtained, the city would still not be obligated to allow fences in the right-of-way. And the city could grant the right-of-way encroachment agreement and the variance would fail. In both of those scenarios, the fence would still have to move. Regardless of whether or not a variance could be binding in the future, the licensing agreement can be written as such that the notice period for termination of that right is short. But I don't see it getting locked into a situation where we're stuck for some long period of time and for various reasons.
Okay, the reason I break that is I would be concerned about granting essentially a property right over that isn't come with the code. And I kind of sided with Mr. Ryder and looked at on code, is the code, it's always been there. yes, there's violations out there, but, the Open Field is not in front of us, so. While my heart goes out and I'd like to find some remedy, that matter is in violation, and, I'm pretty certain, I've heard the phrase that ignorance of the law is not an excuse. That's kind of the problem we have.
Other comments? Okay, that concludes all the testimony, and we can do one of two things. You can continue this, and make certain if you want more information, or want to commiserate, ask more questions from, the attorney and allow that, or we can close the public testimony portion of the hearing and go forward with the, decision. Actually, just close the hearing and go to a decision.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Okay, is there a second? Second. A motion by Mr. Algren, second by Mr. Wagner to close this public hearing, this appeal hearing. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. John, are you still there?
Yeah, Mayor, I am here.
Okay, was that an aye to close the public hearing?
I support the motion.
Yes, thank you. All right, that unanimously, the public hearing, or the appeal hearing is closed, and we'll go through the decision-making process. I would put forward for your approval the staff report, sign-up sheet, CC 1000, which is the vision triangle as described by Mr. Orton, and then CC 1001, which is the pictures of the fence that was presented by, Kylie, right? Yes, Kylie. So that is the evidence listed I have. Is there a motion to approve? A motion by Mr. Carlson, second? Second by Mr. Hopper? Okay, motion by Mr. Carlson, second by Mr. Hopper to approve the evidence list as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is that an aye, John?
Yes, that's an aye, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you, I couldn't hear you, I apologize.
I think it's a little today, my apologies.
Okay, so Mr. Waterman, the evidence list is approved, and so this is not comprehensive plan analysis, this is just simply findings of fact, an order of decision, or does it go straight to an order of decision?
Mr. Mayor, the requirement in code is that we have a public hearing, and so staff use the regular public hearing staff format.
Okay.
But the city council certainly can find facts. They would like there are findings of facts that have been in dispute, to some extent tonight about the fence and where it was and where it is now. And so that might be justified prior to, making a conclusion of law, or those would be done in conjunction with each other as well.
Okay. Then I would ask for council's findings of fact.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Allgood.
call city council to accept the general facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list previously approved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Hopper. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Conclusions of law.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hopper.
The council has the authority to request an order to proceed approved or denied, if public notice requirements were met. And the hearing is held with respect to the requirements of Idaho Code and the ordinance.
So a motion, Mr. Hopper, second by Mr. Carlson, regarding conclusions of law. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, I heard that. You hear that now? Okay, order of decision. Mr. Carlson.
I just want to state that, first of all, this is based on the decision Ms. Phillips made and her investigation of a complaint that was made. So based on the findings of fact, conclusion of law, called the city council hereby orders case number APB 2001, request by Timothy and Crowley Greenwald to overturn code enforcement determination that Timothy and Calvin Greenwald cannot keep a 6-foot solid wood fence in its current location adjacent to curb along Linden Street on the property addressed as 2424 Fairview Avenue on the northwest corner of Linden Street in Fairview is denied with the opportunity to work with staff for a better solution.
Okay, with that.
Mayor, Councilman Humphrey, that's a fine motion. Obviously, the direction of staff to bring something back to help resolve this issue, leaving fence in its current location, would require other actions that council may have to approve. So the main decision, is denial or approval, and then the direction to staff is just next steps, sort of unofficially to staff to give them some direction on how to resolve the outstanding problem. So your motion is perfectly fine.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Carlson for denial and then direction for staff for further solution. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McGee. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Wagner?
these ones are always so confusing because I give it to the approval, so just make sure that I'm very clear on what it is. I think I do, but again, just to make sure, it is a little different. So it is to deny the request by the applicant to allow the fence, or is that correct?
No,
To deny the
request
appeal.
is to deny the appeal, and it's basically confirming that Ms. Phillips followed the right, protocol.
That's a nice one, yeah, sure.
So, again, if you want it for clarification, your motion could include you uphold the decision of, Ms. Phillips and deny the appeal. If you want to just include those words, that will make it crystal clear. Is that okay with the motioner?
Yes, sir.
Is that okay with the seconder? Yes. Okay, so you have,
It is, Chair.
okay, so you have a motion, again, to repeat it, the motion is to uphold the decision of the planning and zoning code enforcement officer, and to deny the appeal, and then with further direction with staff to see if there's further action to be used. Okay, that's the motion. Is that all right, Mr. Martin? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Carlson,
Yes.
Pollard, John, McGee,
Yes.
Allgood,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Hopper.
Thank you very much. The decision is unanimous, and so the decision of the code enforcement officer is upheld. The appeal is denied, with instruction to staff to seek a solution that, all right? Does that meet the end of your motion, Mr. Carlson? Thank you very much. That completes item number one under new business, and then takes us, now, again, just for clarification, this can be, any decision of city council can be appealed to the court, the district court. So there's still that same ex parte communication, thing, so for 28 days, council members and myself cannot be contacted about the decision. After that, we're fair game. But in the meantime, you can certainly talk to staff, you can see what some of the options are, and go from there. Okay? All right, the next item then is a public hearing. This is legislating to consider public comments regarding the adoption of the 2020 Caldwell Community Development Block Grant Action Plan for the purpose of housing and community development. That's a mouthful. And what are you talking about, my guy? All right, I will declare this public hearing open, and Carrie Foster will be making staff report tonight. So hope you've all got lots of hard questions for Carrie.
Okay.
Yep, just give us your name and address, but you do not need to be sworn.
Okay, my name is Carrie Foster, I'm at 411 Blaine Street, Caldwell, Idaho. And, good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is evening, I am presenting the fifth annual action plan for the program year 2020 CDBG funding. Some of the key points in the action plan of the budget are continuing to support the short-term rental and utility systems and improvements in public parks. We have included support for the most vulnerable residents through an emergency rehab repair program. And there's actually some exciting current projects that are happening as well. We have the Lions Park lighting and the sidewalks for both Roberts Rec Memorial Park and Libby Park, which will hopefully be completed by the end of the fiscal year. The fifth-year budget also includes infrastructure projects as well, incorporating some previous year and fifth-year money for the Arthur Street multi-module bike pedestrian pathway.
Could you repeat that again?
Okay.
You say it backwards.
From 21st Street to downtown. A couple other things, some amazing accomplishments this year have been the Westview Loft, which is now 50 new units, which is 50 new units, and the Hope Plaza 2, which is comprising of 30 additional units, which is a workforce multi-family housing in Caldwell. The corner of 3rd and Denton Street has 7 brand new single-family homes built for income-qualified families, including one that is fully accessible and has been sold to a disabled resident who previously struggled to find single housing. So the home is fully ADA accessible for it. And then, thank you for the continued support for these projects that have such a tremendous impact in our Caldwell community, and I will send her the comment.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Foster? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Foster.
Thank you.
Also, Elizabeth McManny is on the phone. Elizabeth, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think Carrie just did a fantastic job of outlining where we are.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. It's nice to hear your voice, even not being able to see your face. So nice to hear your voice. Okay.
It is nice to be here tonight.
Sounds good. All right. There is no one who has signed up to speak at this public hearing. So, if there is no further questions, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Allgood, second by Mr. Hopper. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The public hearing is closed. That takes us then to the resolution regarding the action plan. I will read this resolution by title and ask for council's consideration. This is a resolution adopting the 2020 City of Caldwell Annual Action Plan for Housing and Community Development and authorizing the submission of the annual action plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion from Mr. Hopper. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a second by Mr. Allgood. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Hopper?
Yes.
Colvin?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Allgood?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The resolution regarding the CDBG grant, action plan for housing and community development has been approved. Thank you very much, Ms. Foster. The next item then is item number 4, which is accept the FY 2021 tentative budget and set the public hearing date for Monday, August 17, 2020 at 7 p.m. Mrs. Money.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we are here to bring together the culmination of our work over the past 4 months. So I am here to present to you a tentative budget and call for a public hearing to be set for Monday, August 17th, 2020 in this room at 7 p.m. The tentative budget that has been presented to you tonight is a total expenditure budget, appropriation budget, of $88,209,702, with revenues, non-property tax revenues of $60,040,978, and property tax revenues to be levied of $18,984,179. with the use of fund balance at $9,184,546 to balance the budget. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell, and of course, again, for the record, this budget does not include a 3% property tax increase, and it does not allow for the use of any foregone revenue in this budget. However, the next item, we'll be talking about the foregone that is created because we did not take any tax increase this year, and so that's a different topic. But this budget is a balanced budget. Again, as you know, it can go down, it cannot go up. And then also we'll receive clarification on the proposal from the CARES Act, before we adopt the final budget. And so we'll bring that to you as we have more information. But again, this is a culmination of many months worth of work. We've had, how many public workshops?
2, 4, 5.
5 public workshops to get to this point, along with a lot of work by staff and appointed officials. It's been a very, very good budget process, especially to be able to put together and not have to take any of the 3% tax increase. So, we appreciate your efforts. Are there any questions from council or comments? If not, is there a motion to? Oh, I'm sorry.
Move to accept the FY 2021 tentative budget, set the public hearing date for Monday, August 17th, 2020, 7 p.m. East Street.
Thank you, sir. Second. A motion by Mr. Hopper, second by Mr. Carlson, to accept the FY 2021 tentative budget and set the public hearing date for Monday, August 17th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in these chambers. All in favor, please. What's that?
And virtual.
And virtual, yeah. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I believe the vote is unanimous. Any opposed? It is unanimous. The public hearing has been set for August 17th, 2020 at 7 p.m. and also on Zoom. All right, the next item is an action item with a request of a public hearing to be scheduled for Monday, August 17th, 2020, to reserve additional foregone in the amount of $551,922 in order to utilize this amount in subsequent years if necessary. Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight, this is a new item. This is the result of some legislation that was passed during this legislative session that took place in January through end of March there, Jerem. And this new request from the legislature is for us to now identify foregone property tax revenue. So this foregone in the amount of $551,922 is a result of us not taking that 3% that we're allowed to take to increase our budget. And in order for us to preserve this foregone amount, we now have to request and hold a public hearing. So tonight I am requesting that we schedule a public hearing on Monday, August 17th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in this room for you to affirm the request to hold $551,922 in foregone money to be used at a later date and time.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hopper.
I would move that we hold a public hearing on Monday, August 17th, 2020, in these chambers and virtually, to indicate our reserved foregone amount for possible use in subsequent years.
Thank you very much. There's a motion to set the public hearing. Is there a second? A motion, Mr. Hopper. Second by Mr. Carlson. Sorry to beat you to it, John. Second by Mr. Carlson to set the public hearing for Monday, August 17th, 2020, to reserve additional foregone in the amount of $551,922. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carried unanimously.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hopper.
Just as a curiosity, does the hearing require us to take action on it as well, or is just the hearing?
We have to take action on it.
There will be some kind of resolution that says.
Yes, there is.
Just making sure.
Yeah. All right. The next item is also an action item, which is to accept the notice of a public hearing to be held on Monday, August 17th, 2020, to increase, to consider an increase of fees over 5% that are previously charged in public works and engineering. And so again, the fees that necessitate public hearing would be in sanitation, water, and engineering, and so it's requested that we set a public hearing to consider these for Monday, August 17th, 2020.
Mr. Mayor, so moved.
Okay, is there a second? Second. A motion by Mr. Hopper, second by Mr. Carlson, to accept the notice of a public hearing to be held on Monday, August 17, 2020, to consider an increase of fees over 5% of that previously charged for public works and engineering, including new fees and the increase to or creation of fines. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. The next item is to accept the notice of public hearing to be held on Monday, August 17th, 2020, to consider an increase of fees over 5% of that previously charged for the city clerk, golf, planning and zoning, and recreation, including new fees and the increase to or creation of fines.
So moved.
Thank you. A motion by Mr. Carlson. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hopper. Again, to accept the notice of public hearing for those fees as mentioned previously. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is to consider bill number 32, ordinance number 3289, to annex 1421 Hope Lane into the Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District, with the request to waive the rules and pass it on its first reading. This is again housekeeping. This is something we do often. It's at the request of the property owner, and so this action will fulfill their request. I will read this bill by title only and ask for council's consideration. Bill number 32, ordinance number 3289, an ordinance of the city of Caldwell, Idaho, annexing a portion of property within the corporate city limits into the Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District of the city of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho, and changing the boundaries thereof, directing the city engineer to alter the boundary map accordingly, declaring the intent, this is my favorite statement of anything we do, of the city to pool water rights and apply a uniform method of allocating assessments and charges and providing an effective date. Whoever came up with that language to pool water rights, you know, that's a pretty cool thing. Is that right? Is that something right?
And we've done this a lot, Mr. Mayor, and there's still just one pool.
There's still just one pool, I know. All right, the bill is before you and it's been requested in place.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Call.
I would move to waive the three reading rule, consider bill number 32, ordinance 3289 on its first reading by title only.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. A motion and a second by Mr. Carlson, a second by Mr. Hopper to waive the three reading process. Consider bill number 32, ordinance number 3289 on its first reading by title only. Clerk call the roll, please.
Carlson?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Alvid?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Hopper?
Yes. Thank you very much. The rules have been suspended.
Mr. Mayor, I will sponsor bill number 32, ordinance 3289, move for its passage.
Thank you. Is there a second? I have a motion by Mr. Carlson, second by Mr. Hopper, to sponsor bill number 32, ordinance number 3289, and to move for its passage on its first reading by title only. So the clerk call the roll, please.
Carlson?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Alvid?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Hopper?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Bill number 32, ordinance number 3289 has been passed on its first reading by title only. That completes item number 8, and moves us to item number 9, which is similar to the item before. Again, this is a request by Sienna Hills subdivision to annex phase number 9 into the Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District. This has been brought forward with a request to waive the rules and pass it on its first reading by title only. I will read this bill by title only and ask for council's consideration. This is known as bill number 33, ordinance number 3290, an ordinance of the city of Caldwell, Idaho, annexing a portion of property within the corporate city limits into the Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District of the city of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho, and changing the boundaries thereof, directing the city engineer to alter the boundary map accordingly, declaring the intent of the city to pool water rights and apply a uniform method of allocating assessments and charges and providing an effective date.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hopper.
So we waive the rules and consider bill number 33, ordinance number 3290, on its first reading by title only.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Hopper, second by Mr. Carlson, to waive the three reading process. Consider bill number 33, ordinance number 3290 on its first reading by title only. For the clerk call the roll, please.
Hopper?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Alvid?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hopper.
I would sponsor bill number 33, ordinance number 3290, move for its passage.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Hopper, second by Mr. Carlson, to sponsor bill number 33, ordinance number 3290, Move first passage on its first reading by title only. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Hopper. Paulson.
Yes.
McGee.
Yes.
Alden.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes. Thank you. Bill number 33, ordinance number 3290 has been passed on its first reading by title only. The next item is also an action item, the financial report. Mr. Allgood.
Mr. Mayor, the Finance Committee has reviewed current accounts payable in the amount of $1,682,242.87 for the period ending July 29, 2020, and a net payroll of $405,363.04 for a pay period ending July 18, 2020. I move that accounts payable in the amount of $1,682,242.87 represented by check numbers 147324 through 147752, and payroll in the amount of $405,363.14, represented by check numbers 34812 through 34852, and direct deposits be accepted, payments approved, and vouchers filed in the office of the city clerk.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Allgood, second by Mr. Hopper to approve the financial report as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Council reports. Let's see, Mr. Pollard is not here, so Mr. Paulson.
I have nothing, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper.
Nothing special.
Okay. Mr. Wagner.
Nothing.
Mr. Allgood.
Nothing, sir.
Mr. McGee.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Just real quickly, again, I want to thank everyone who participated in the food drive last Saturday. It was a wonderful event. Lots of families that needed some help received it, and it was a wonderful, wonderful thing. Also, had the pleasure of attending the retirement for Brad Carrico, Italian chief over at the fire department. I think he was with the city for 26 years, but I think his total service was in the 30s. Probably been around for a while. Yeah. So Brad Carrico's started a new chapter of his life, and it was nice to be able to be there and watch him enter that new chapter. Very nice things were said about him, and it was nice to be there. He certainly made an impact in our department.
Who were the two new, PCs that, they've had two?
Shane Eric and Richard Carrico. Those are two new battalion chiefs.
Good choice.
Yeah, both good choices. I also had the privilege of inspecting the new bathrooms at Simplot. That was awesome. I don't know if you had a chance to see those yet, but those bathrooms actually look modern, and they you know, there's automatic water and tile, and it actually looks like it's,
They pulled off the miracle?
they pulled off a miracle. It looks amazing.
You know, Mr. Mayor, when I worked there, when I was 14.
You blew the budget. I said, okay, now the good number. I knew you couldn't do it in budget.
that door.
It was close. It was close.
Yeah.
But, it actually would have been in budget if we hadn't discovered the leak in the roof. I think that's what, you know, there was some, when that rainstorm happened, that bad couple days, it was dripping through the bleachers onto the top of the roof, and then, we had a problem, so. But actually, it's fortunate, because rather find it, now than after the work is done, and have to go in and replace it, so it was wonderful. Also attended the archery dedication. You know, Vita Sarah was the one who, it was his idea, he ramrodded that, development out there for the archery range. That was his life, he loved archery hunting, and he had passed away, as you know, and so we honored him, and there's a nice, marker out there with his name and years of his service, and so, it was nice to be able to attend that, archery dedication and pay our respects to Vita Sarah. That is all I have. Anything else that I missed, or any further business?
You know, Mr. Mayor, speaking of Dee, you know, he was in a lot of pain for a lot of his life. But he would sit out there, my son and I used to go out there and shoot range. And, he would sit out there and pick up broken arrows and rebuild them. He gave my son a ton of rebuilt arrows for practice. He was just such a, I mean, he didn't know us from Adam, but he would just sit out there and I don't know if you've ever seen him shoot, but that guy can sit in the shooting position, in the sitting position, is just amazing.
Yeah, when we dedicated it, he actually, or when we first opened it, he actually shot some 60-yard targets and had balloons at 60 yards. Just opening like, very good result.
Guys like that don't give an animal much choice.
No, they don't, they don't. All right, but thank you for those comments, and he's truly a great man. Anything else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? A motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Allgood, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're done. Thank you, and be safe and healthy.
Hey, Garrett.
Yes.
Yeah, that comes in.
Video last week, but I don't know.